Hello and welcome into another edition of Sitting Down with Sgar. I'm the football voice of the Hoyas, Jeremy Huber, joined by Georgetown head coach Rob Scarlotta. Rob, thank you for taking some time this week.
Great to see you.
Coach, got to start off with a tough day in Providence. Your team falls to Brown in a game that early on seemed like you guys could stay in, but some big mistakes, and then the Bears kind of took it to you. Give me your thoughts on what you saw on the field on Saturday.
Yeah, we play good teams. If you don't come out well and you break some of our cardinal rules that we measure, wins and losses by, you wind up on the wrong end of it. So give Coach Perry and Brown a lot of credit. They came out and played well. And, we for the first time all season, we turned the ball over, made some special teams errors, and gave up some big plays on defense. So that's a recipe for not a very good afternoon. And, I've been really excited, though, right from the trip back and into this preparation week for Columbia, just with how the kids have approached it. And, we talk about fail, if you fail, you got to learn from it. So, there's no quit in this team. And, they've done a really good job rebounding from it and relying on each other and trying to uncover, the things that we need to do different in our process to get the result that we want this weekend.
And Rob, let's delve into that if I may. Your approach as a coach, when you have a game like that, is that a game where you try to flush it? Is that a game where you say to yourself, no, we've got to go look at all the bad details to make sure this doesn't happen again? What's your approach after a game like that?
Yeah, you don't want to go in and change your whole approach. We believe in what we do. We talk about the 1% incremental improvement each day, and the process drives the results. So, I went back to just look at what I did during the week and what we did as a staff with the practice schedule all the way to our travel and, what our pregame looked like and all those things. So it comes down to basics. We chart how many explosives we have and what we give up. If we take care of the ball and the other team doesn't, we can force some turnovers. And then just overall tackling, forcing missed tackles in space as well as making tackles on our end. So those are really simple, measurable things that we chart each week, and we didn't do well at any of them. So when you have a day like that, I don't think you can just chalk it up and burn the film. I think you got to take a hard look at it, see the things that you need to correct and move forward, because this is a journey. It's not a one game season. It's not a one missed tackle deal. So, a lot of missed assignments, delving into that to see what we're doing from a scheme standpoint, as well as, making sure that we're, not making the same mistake twice as we go into the Columbia week.
Rob, let's get to a positive in this one. Game getting out of hand a little bit at the half. You come out, you have some good drives in the second half that ultimately you didn't cash in, but Jimmy Kibble made big catches on both of those drives and had you guys in position to get yourself back in the game. How proud are you of the kind of leader he is to get out there and try to get something going for his team when things are going bad?
Yeah, Jimmy's a consummate pro. He's who you want on and off the field, who you want in your locker room. And I think halftime was really telling. Our leaders stepped up and, got us going in the right direction. There was no finger pointing. It was, hey, how do we make improvements going in the second half? So, I've been saying it since he's a freshman here. Jimmy's one of the best receivers at this level. I think he's the best receiver in the league. And, it's my job to put him in position to get touches and impact the game.
Coach, before we move over to defense quickly, I got to ask this. No Danny Lauder in the game against Brown. Des Thomas got time with the start. You got Jack Johnson in late in the game. Kind of assess what you saw from your quarterbacks coming into a spot that really they hadn't seen before.
Yeah, we trust all our guys. There's a great competition in that room. There has been the entire season, and that's been a back and forth thing. And, we are, over the years, I've played two quarterbacks and had great competition in that room from when I was coaching the position to being the head coach. So, for me, it's one of those things where we want them to do what we teach them, lead the team and, make good decisions with the football. I think Des made a lot of great decisions, ran the ball extremely well, handled the pressure, and definitely a learning experience for him and Jack, throughout on Saturday.
Coach, let's flip it over to defense. B.J. Bolden, a kid that you kind of looks like a run-type stuffer, but his second interception of the season. Kind of talk about him and him rounding into a complete player that's been in that starting lineup for you this year.
Yeah, BJ's done a really good job. He cut his teeth on special teams for us. He comes from, down in Pahokee, Florida, which is, a really hotbed of high school football and a really good recruit for us. So, I think he's part of a group that's trying to find their identity, and play up to the standard that we have, defensively here at Georgetown. So, a lot of things that we'd like to clean up. BJ's done a good job of, improving. Was in the right place at the right time for a spectacular play on the interception. So hopefully you can continue to develop and continue to have our defense playing better here as we go into the Columbia game.
Well, Coach, let's move on in the show right now. Time for our Coach's Corner here on Sitting Down with Sgar. We bring on your your outside linebackers, Coach Coin Dang. Coin, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today.
Right on, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
Let's start off here. Why was Georgetown a good spot for you?
Georgetown was a good spot for me. You just talk about alignment of values. This is a place that I believe in. Speaking with the leadership, obviously starting with Coach Sgar, this is a program that is about holistic of the young men that we bring in. And, that's something that's very important to me. And, I think it's a place that you can really have it all. If you want to compete at the highest level, play Division I football, have opportunities that come to you in life after football, and you want to be active in the community. Those are kind of the pillars of, what we got going on here. So I think it was an alignment of values that made me excited to be here. This is a place that, I would recommend, somebody in my family to want to come and take advantage of this opportunity. So, I'm just fired up to be here.
You talk about family. This is a chance for you to come home. You're a Virginia guy. What's it been like to get back in the East Coast, not far away? You and I from actually the same county, kind of like Joe Parton was last week. We had him on the show. We got a streak going, Coach. What's it been like to get back to the East Coast?
Oh, yeah. I always give Coach Parton a little bit of, talk a little smack to him, being Northern Virginia guys. It's been great. Obviously, with the high school about 20 miles from here, John Champ High School in Loudoun County. Was on the West Coast and traveling and doing different things for the last 10 years or so. So to be back in the area, be close to some family, it's a blessing. So it's just alignment.
Scar, let's bring you in here. What has Coin brought to your staff?
First and foremost, he's a great person. He really cares about our players, and you can tell that from day one that he's been with us. On top of the fact that he's had an incredible journey himself, two-time captain at Cal, had some work in the NFL, and is, being able to bring the experience and really relate to our players and staff, like I said, from day one. So, we're always looking first for fit first and bringing great people here to Georgetown. And, we're very lucky that the brand and the style that we have here attract great people. So, I would say he's made a huge impact on the field and maybe even more so off the field with our program.
Going back to you, we kind of talked about this before we went on the air, but we all played football, and sometimes as a player, you kind of test your coaches. You're a guy that played at a high level, higher maybe than your players have so far, at least in their careers. Do you get a little bit of the, we're going to listen to him because he played at Cal, or is it still, I got to get out there and prove myself to these guys?
I think the playing experience helps. Obviously, playing at Cal, being a two-time captain at Cal, being a three-time captain in college, being at Independence Community College before, and spending 2 years in the NFL. I think the guys understand that I've seen it before. I don't ask them to do anything I've never done. But at the same time, you got to build the relationships and kind of allow your teaching and the development to show. So I think these guys are trusting in the things that I'm asking them to do. How we're doing it, and just process-driven results like we talk about. I always talk to these guys about a frontline mentality, right? So coming off of a loss, we have to be solution-oriented, right? Pain to purpose, all of those things, right? Going back to the basics, right? The simple techniques that we ask these guys to execute every single day with fire, purpose, and passion. So, I think having the playing experience and seeing it at the highest level helps, but definitely I think the relationship piece and the teaching is the most important part.
Doing a great job with that. I want to ask you about one of your top pupils, as it were, Cooper Blumstrom. Just such a talent for this team. What's it been like working with Cooper?
You see, he puts a smile on my face when you say his name. Coop, obviously, he's a young man who did some good things before I got here and has made some plays. The biggest conversations that we've had are making that transition from a young guy who has made plays to being an experienced player who is continuing to develop and, wants to dominate and be the best player on the field at all times. So he's continued to develop his skill set. Football is very important to him. So he's easy to coach. You know, he wants to get better. He asks questions every single day. And I think I'm just able to, allow to continue to teach him the minute details that will allow him to be consistent and successful every single down. And also just talk about the small things, right? Like, what's it like coming back on the road after an away game in terms of your routine? What do you do with your body, right? How do you get ready for a game starting on Sunday on all the way throughout the week? So, I really value my relationship with him. He's extremely driven. Football is important to him, and he cares about his teammates. So, I absolutely love to coach him.
Well, Coyne, he's got a great guy to look up to with all your success. Keep doing it. You've been a great addition to the staff, and hopefully your outside backers and edges will keep being out there and making some plays. Coyne Dang, thank you for joining us on the Sitting Down with Sgar Coaches Spotlight.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
And Coach, of course, Coyne and the group will look to get a win this week. Of course, next week, a big one for you guys, the homecoming game, October the 4th. Morgan State comes to town, 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff as the Hoyas wrap up non-conference play. Register now for the alumni weekend events at GeorgetownGridironClub.com or go to guhoyas.com to purchase tickets. Now we move on in our show. Now time for our Sitting Down with Sgar Spotlight, and we will be joined now by Peter Stefano, Georgetown alum and former football player, managing partner of RBSM. Peter, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Coach, for the time.
Let's start here. You're being honored this week at the Gridiron Club's reception in New York City with their Stonewall Award for your contributions to Georgetown football. What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm blessed and I'm very happy. I was surprised to hear I was selected for the award. As a former offensive lineman, usually don't get too much praise. You only get yelled at when, as I'm sure your offensive lineman on the team coach hear it all the time when they do the lookout blocks. But you don't get much praise or recognition. But I do appreciate it.
Coach, quickly to you, the contributions and guys like Peter, how important are they to this Georgetown program?
People make our place. I'm always asked, I can't believe it. I have some gray in my hair, I'm sure. This is my 30th year here, 3 decades on the hilltop. And one thing, a lot of things have changed and gotten better and just been different. The one thing that stayed consistent throughout the years is our community. We have one of the best communities in the country. I've never been refused a favor or a conversation for myself or our players. And that's going 30 years worth of players and going back, all the people that saw when I had a chance to play here and going back into the 70s. So when you look at our place and you say, hey, what's different about it? Our community and just the acceptance and the willingness to help with anything is what separates us from everybody else.
Peter, what keeps you connected to Georgetown football?
Well, I was a graduate of Georgetown. I'm a native Washingtonian, number one. Graduate of Georgetown. It's a great school. It afforded me an opportunity to learn, ultimately develop a career, and to know, and with a lot of help, by the way, by the coaches at the time. When I graduated in '75, the economy wasn't in the best shape, and a couple of calls by Coach Glacken at the time and Coach Jenkins, who was my offensive line coach, to a recruiter at an accounting firm, got me a job. So I'm forever indebted to those guys and to the program, and continued with the program right after graduation, helping any way we could. And it was primarily fundraising. And then one day, I guess it was a couple of years after I got out, the then founder of the Gridiron Club, I believe Pierce O'Donnell, he said, "Here, you take it over," because he was heading to the West Coast, and I stayed on, I guess, for about 7 or 8 years, and helping with the fundraising and the banquet. That was basically it, and it was interesting times. Yeah, one night we had a fundraiser and it's hard to believe, but what you would do, you would go to the alumni house. They give you the phones. In front of you would be these computer printouts, the old-fashioned computer printouts of alumni, and then 5 or 6 guys would be at the phones, and you cut them up. And I think it was one night we got a hold of Art Rooney, Georgetown graduate, And he said, sure. I think he gave $500 or something, right? And we heard it from the alumni group the next day. They weren't looking for a $500 contribution from Mark Rooney. And I think we did the same thing with Bidwell, as I recall. And because they could just say, hey, I gave, right? But anyway, we had some interesting times back then. Yeah.
That's great. Two famous owners in the NFL pantheon.
Yeah, and if I recall, I think the other owner was, if I'm not mistaken, at the time was Carol Rosenblum's son, was also a Georgetown graduate. So there were, at the time, I think we had three. So we couldn't get a hold of him yet.
What connections. Peter, wanted to take you back a little bit. You were part of that. I believe your first year on the Hilltop was the second year back as a varsity sport for football. What do you remember about those times, you guys coming back in playing in the NCAA after the club guys had played before you?
Well, it wasn't high school any longer. That's one thing. I came from a very competitive high school, St. John's in Washington, D.C., as did many of the players on our team. But it was intense. The coaches there, though they were, it was part-time for them, as everybody knows. They were intense, and they wanted that first victory. And I do remember we went up to, I believe it was a small school, Juniata, right, in Pennsylvania. It was a close game. I was a center at the time, and I'd snapped the ball over the punter's head, I believe. It was one of those. Anyway, we ended up losing the game, but after that, the coach picked me up and just wanted to know why I did that. Anyway, that was back when they could pick you up and shake you, right? But the following week, we did beat Johns Hopkins, I believe. Might have been a week later, and that would have been our first victory. But the one thing I will say this, from the time these guys started in November of '63, they didn't play the game because of the assassination of President Kennedy, through today. The DNA of this program is passion. Everybody's passionate. Now, there's some days you just don't have a good day at the office, like last Saturday, but they all love the game. You talk to anybody that goes back to the guys now, they love the game. And that's why they're playing. There many of these, very few, if any, will ever make a career out on the field, but they just love the game. And that's the one thing that I think has kept a lot of the alumni connected, because they see the same DNA.
Well, Peter, we thank you for your passion. Congratulate you again for the Stonewall Award coming up this week at the Gridiron Club reception in New York. And again, thank you so much for taking some time today on our Sitting Down with Sgar Spotlight.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Good luck, guys.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you much, Peter. And Coach, before we go quickly, obviously you guys will be up in the Big Apple this week looking for a bounce back against Columbia. What do you know about the Lions?
Good football team. I got Lou Little sitting off on my left shoulder here in the picture for a reason. This is a great tradition game for us. Really respect Coach Poppy and the job that they've done up at Columbia. Really close game that we won last year, with them winning the share of the Ivy League title. So, these have been great games. It's always awesome to be up in New York in front of the New York football family. It'll feel, like home up there with all the people and the network and the set of folks that we have that come out and support our team. So, for us, again, another good football team. I'm looking to take care of the Hoyas and make sure we're prepared to come up and, again, another great opponent that we have on our schedule.
Last quick one. You guys it's almost like a conference game in a sense now that you guys played each other so long every year. What are a couple things you guys know you have to do to play and possibly beat Columbia?
Yeah, the keys are the same. We have to come out and start fast. They're a good football team playing at home in their second game. They played a very tough game against Lafayette in the opener. So for us, it's taking care of the football and making sure that we're doing a good job taking care of ourselves. So, we will be prepared for the game. Our kids are really excited to get back out on the field again and get up to New York and play in front of the New York football family.
Well, Coach Scarlotta, thank you so much for the time today and good luck against Columbia.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jeremy.
That'll wrap it up for another edition of Sitting Down with Scar. Remember, Georgetown faces Columbia, noon Eastern kickoff on Saturday. See it in person if you're in the New York metro area or watch online at ESPN+. Thanks again to Coach Scarlotta, Hoya outside linebackers coach Coin Deng, and this year's Gridiron Club Stonewall Award winner Peter Stefano, and producer Eliza Kravitz. That's all for this edition of Sitting Down with Sgar. I'm Jeremy Huber, and Hoya Saxa.